Well, hospital porters, pride and dignity and all that sort of thing. Just been seeing Andy Thomas, as I described earlier. I mentioned him earlier on. Oh, pyramids. Well, I don't know. Sometimes you can see symbolism, sometimes when it's not there. As Freud said, a cigar is sometimes just a cigar. Anyway, Andy Thomas. Now, he gave a speech which was a welcome balance to Nick Pope's, quite frankly. He began saying, well, Nick's entitled to his opinion, but he's wrong. There are reasons to consider some things as conspiracies, theories. I mean, conspiracy theorists. He says, I'm one of them, and he's right. I mean, and to tell you the truth, so am I. I mean, I am a conspiracy theorist, but then so's Nick, because Nick believes in a conspiracy by 19 hijackers working with Osama bin Laden to hijack planes, fly them into buildings. So he's a conspiracy theorist too. And I mean, David Ray Griffin makes this point. The term conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorist is a pejorative one. It's a word used to dismiss all these ideas that we talk about. So he then went on to give what was virtually a sort of pocket encyclopedia of conspiracy theories and reasons why you should believe in them, and why, they're not as nonsensical as old Popey likes us to believe they are. He started with the Norway Spiral, and I think I mentioned the Norway Spiral before. If you're not familiar with it, you can look it up. It's this film and this video. It was very well documented. This thing that appeared in the sky above Norway. The next day, or a couple of days later, it was immediately dismissed as a Russian ballistic missile that had gone wrong during a test firing. Now, I don't know, can you see what's wrong with that story? It happened too quickly. It was told too quickly. Now, the Russians have been caught doing these kind of things before, and getting the cover story is really, getting the explanation for what they've done, getting them to admit it is extremely difficult. And it just seems a little bit weird that immediately, as soon as the Norway Spiral happened and it was suggested that it was a rocket, immediately the Russians start going, oh, it was us, we did it. It was one of our rockets, we fired it, sorry. What? They fired a missile over Norwegian airspace and they say sorry immediately without any attempt to deny it. Now, beware of the cover story that's too eagerly told. Then he went on to talk about crop circles. Now, we discussed crop circles last week at the ASAP conference with Tristan Swale's speech. Tristan, as I have explained, is a believer in the 100% man-made theory, and he's not. And he then again he went on to say, there are lots of holes in the story about the 100% man-made theory. Not least that you have to take the crop circle maker's word for it. Tristan often says that he knows who made this one and he knows who made that one. Of course, if you say to him, well, Tristan, who are they? Can you prove it? And I say no. Basically, because you get that person into a whole load of trouble. So that's the problem with the 100% man-made hypothesis. He then goes on to talk about Richard Dawkins, as of course Graham Hancock did too. And he started talking about Dawkins' ideas about God and everything, and about how that's not necessarily true. There was also he talked about the out-of-body experience and the near-death experience, and apparently he said something quite amazing to me. He said that they've been doing these near-death experiments, and I've heard about this. What they do is, in some hospitals, including Southampton, I wonder if they're doing it at the JR as well, I'm not sure, but they've been putting objects or images on the tops of the lights or on the tops of shelves in resuscitation areas and operating theatres, which would not normally be there. And they're waiting to see if people who have these near-death experiences, for one of them to have them and then report back something like, hey doctor, you should see that funny sticker that's on the top of your light. How do you know? Well, of course, according to Andy Thomas, he says it's been met with success, which is amazing because they did this experiment about 20 years ago and it didn't work. Not least because it's very, very difficult to control. It's difficult to... it takes a long time to get enough data, to get enough people in the right place at the right time having these near-death experiences. but I mean, they didn't report anything particularly strange. Well, if they had done, obviously, the skeptics would say something like, well, they must have seen it reflected from a pair of goggles or something, or from the window. They must have seen it reflected. You can't convince the skeptics. Susan Blackmore is still convinced it's just all in the head. Susan Blackmore. I just said Susan Blackmore. NBA. 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 Excuse me, it's just overcome there. Animal mutilation. Andy went on to talk about animal mutilation. Now, this is a very disturbing phenomenon that has been observed on farms across the world. No need to go into the background about it. Linda Moulton Howe, other people like David Caton, Robert Hulse have studied these things. None of the, it's either the aliens are doing it for some reason. We don't know why. Are they taking specimens? Well, why do they need to take so many? What's going on? Or it's the government doing it. It's a secret government operations to keep to gather specimens from farm animals. You may wonder why they don't just get hold of their own farm animals. It's easy enough to do. You easily buy one or even rustle one. You don't usually leave the body in the field afterwards. So there's no real answer to that, I think. Roswell. You mentioned Roswell. Enough said about Roswell. The sad thing about Roswell, unlike Rendlesham Forest, is there was a 30-year gap between the event happening and investigations seriously beginning. The starting point of the Roswell study was in 1977 when Jesse Marcel was interviewed by Stanton Friedman. By that time, 30 years had passed. A lot of the witnesses were dead, or they'd forgot their memory was going, or they'd forgotten things. It's missed opportunity there, really, according to Andy. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, I think we may still hear more about Roswell yet, but the Rendlesham Forest incident, I think, holds more hope. Area 51 and things like that. He mentioned Area 51, this mysterious place. Obviously, there's a lot of the theories coming from that are valid. I think there's reason to be suspicious. Alien abduction. He mentioned Betty and Barney Hill. Now, these were supposed to be this couple were driving home from home one night, and they were accosted by a flying saucer and various little beings. According to the official story, Betty and Barney Hill were the first ever alien abduction, and every alien abductee since then has just been copying them. Not true. That's a lie. It's not true. He talks about other things such as prophecies of Edgar Casey and the 2012 thing. And 2012, if you look in the description box, I'll put in my own film about 2012, which you might have seen. 2012 Ahoy. But there's other prophecies like the Fatima thing. And stuff about Pope Benedict, and because apparently, when the third secret of the Fatima was revealed, the cry went up that maybe that wasn't the real secret, and the guy who brought this up was actually Cardinal Ratzinger. Turns out he turned out to be Pope Benedict. I mean, what the hell's going on? I don't like that guy anyway. Oh, you're right.
Nick Pope's a joke.
He certainly he is. I'll be taking him to task in my review, don't worry. Discussions about civil liberties, right? 9/11. I've spoken a lot about these things. The fact that problem reaction solutions being used with terrorism, immigration, various other things such as health and safety, fears over our children's safety from In this little speech, Andy pays tribute to David Icke and says how much he admires David for what he said, because he's been proved right, basically, about microchipping, about the terrorist attacks, things like that, false flag, stuff like that. So, David, I'm glad that Andy mentioned David, because David is one of the guys that set most of us off. A lot of us got to where we are now by listening to David, so well done, Andy, for that. He mentions Bohemian Grove, this mysterious place in the middle of the Californian forests, where the elite gather to pay homage to their owl god and sacrifice apparently an effigy of a child to this god by burning it. Again, that's been very much researched. Sadly, one of the people who broke into Bohemian Grove, John Ronson, is a real skeptic, actually. He wrote a pretty lousy book called Them. It was followed up by a much better book called the men who stare at goats, but basically he's regressed back to his sceptical stage now. You know, he spoke at Tam London, as you recall, if you read my report. The moon landings, right? This is again, he defies people even within our community. I don't believe the moon landings were real. Have people been to the moon? Yes, of course. I mean, but they've been in the secret anti-gravity spacecrafts. They haven't gone in rockets. Apollo. So people have been to the moon, yeah, but not the way history tells it. Yes, they have, using the methods and personnel that history tells us. And of course, 9/11. Andy finished with 9/11. You know, is Nick Pope right to think there's no evidence that there's any conspiracy? That it really was done by Al Qaeda. In other words, is he not a conspiracy theorist, as he would say, or is he, what I would say, a conspiracy theorist of the 19 hijackers theory? Nick Pope says no. Nick Pope has been on TV in debates with people over this, like Annie Machon. He's been debating people on TV about this subject. He's become a big name in the sort of conspiracy debunker movement in terms of 9/11 especially. And he says, yes, there are reasons to believe 9/11 was an inside job. And I think Andy's right and Nick is wrong, in a nutshell. And I'll be saying more about that in my review of Nick Pope's lecture, which will be a written report, which you will see on the HPANWO blog. Right, I'm going to go back in there now because there's a couple more speakers and we're coming towards the end of the conference now. It's about 5:30 in the evening. So I'm going to head back in there now. I found this little spot here to do this recording. I don't know Swindon very well. It's a bit of a sort of mystery place, but you know, it's actually quite nice. I said it was a bit Milton Keynesy, but, you know, but parts of it are lovely and the people are great. And I'd say I went to a pub last night with Jack Vitek, who you'll know from the Exopolitics conference, and another girl called Carrie, and we had a lovely meal. And I tell you what, I was really kicking myself because I didn't bring my smart trousers, and I thought, damn, I'm not going to be able to get into any pubs now because there'll be bouncers on the door like there are in Oxford, and they'll be going, oh, you can't come in dressed like that. Oh, you know. Guess what? It was Saturday night in Swindon, big pub, city centre, no bouncers. People in there dressed casually. Some were dressed smart, some were just casually, and everyone just got on with what they were doing. And that really, really surprised me. I was really, really impressed that it seems that Swindon is a more easygoing place than Oxford, actually. I really do think that it's kind of... So that actually... I felt more comfortable, and there was a lot less of what you might call aggression. The kind of aggressiveness you get you get in some pubs in Oxford. I mean, I know this is just based on one night sort of out on the town, but definitely I sense a different atmosphere, more relaxed atmosphere than you get from in Oxford. So that's another plus side, I think, to this place. Well, I'll see you later. Take care.